December 7th. War. Witnessing the surprise attack. Sunday morning. Awakening early Sunday morning, I had breakfast at Boys Town and then boarded a cattle car bus with a short ride to the Navy Yard. Once inside the main gate, I walked the brief distance to where the battleship Pennsylvania rested in dry dock and waited alongside for Brand's arrival as we had agreed. On board the Pennsylvania, the ship's band had already assembled on the rear deck awaiting 0800, the time the huge stars and stripes would be raised to their accompaniment of the national anthem. Standing nearby, I continued taking in the quiet and orderly activities. Casually, I noticed several single-engine planes in silhouette coming on a glide path toward the harbor. Not too far distant from these, I saw still more planes of another flight. Their outline was dark and unrecognizable. Then explosions began. Explosions all around me. The planes would pull up from where they had been low over the water, circle, and come in again. More were joining them. As they pulled up and circled, their colors became visible. The red ball became easily recognized on fuselage and wing. These were Jap planes. They were making torpedo runs, bombing runs, strafing runs. The Japs were attacking Pearl Harbor, for God's sake. Smoke began rising, small at first, but rapidly increasing into huge, billowing clouds from explosive detonations deep within stricken ships. Fuel oil from ruptured ships' tanks began covering the surface of the harbor's clear waters. Then fire began spreading on the floating fuel. At first, I just stood there, mouth wide open, staring in total disbelief. Flying metal, bomb fragments, bullets all around, bouncing like hailstones off the concrete. It was like standing in the middle of a North Dakota hailstorm. I backed against a nearby structure, probably an electric substation, stood still and watched. A bomb hit Pennsylvania on the port side seaplane crane. The explosion was great, and I could feel the compressed air from the concussion's blast squeeze my head like the jaws of a vice. My hearing deadened and my ears began to ring. A second bomb went directly down the smokestack of one of the destroyers, directly ahead of the Pennsylvania in the dry dock. Ship's steel ripped apart from the blast and flew everywhere, some bouncing along the concrete pier and landing. Internal fires broke out in both destroyers, and more smoke clouds were added to the massive clouds already forming over the stricken harbor. Jap planes were still everywhere making bomb, bullet, and torpedo attacks. Looking over towards Boys Town, I could see other Jap planes delivering similar attacks to Hickam Field hangars, and the airplanes lined up in parade fashion on the ground. One torpedo went under the Oglala, striking the new cruiser Helena. The explosion was tremendous. Oglala began turning completely over in the water just across the pier from Pennsylvania, while I was still standing in between. I saw and heard and felt explosions from the Arizona as she was hit again and again. The battleship Arizona was 608 feet long, 97 feet wide, and about 35,000 tons heavy. I have not words to describe the magnitude of the explosions. Then, even as I watched, Arizona lifted up, unbelievably from the water, forward mast tilted crazily to one side. She slowly sank, finally resting on the bottom of the harbor. The waterline to Ford Island was crushed beneath her bulk, leaving Ford Island without this desperately needed resource to fight the conflagrations. From ships afire and oil-coated water ablaze, black and gray smoke was low on the water and rising high in the air. Ships, boats, and small craft began appearing all over the harbor. Each was working independently, going everywhere, pulling struggling swimmers and others horribly injured out of the oily, flaming water, taking them ashore where they were left while the boat crews returned again and again into the harbor for more casualties blackened with fuel oil, clothing saturated, gooey, slippery, and heavy. In this unbelievable chaos, a few boats were recognizable as being used by Navy photographers engaged in their official duty of recording the escalating disaster at Pearl Harbor. With my back against the concrete substructure, facing the onslaught, I continued to stand and watch the attack as it unfolded, making no effort to seek cover or protect myself, mesmerized by the scenes, all too much to take in or to fully comprehend. I could not believe it. Then, having seen enough, and with comprehension flooding back into my mind, I turned and walked close to the shop walls, running the short distance further to the Navy Yard and into my home shop. Once inside and sheltered from view of the continuing attack, I felt a bit more safe, although protected only by thin metal corrugated walls. There I hurried to my locker, got into dungarees, and reported myself present and available. That early, I was one of the few to assemble and to be sent out on small rescue parties.